The greatest gains and values are farthest from being appreciated. We easily come to doubt if they exist. We soon forget them. They are the highest reality. Perhaps the facts most astounding and most real are never communicated by man to man. The true harvest of my daily life is somewhat as intangible and indescribable as the tints of morning or evening. It is a little stardust caught, a segment of the rainbow, which I have clutched. Yet, for my part, I was never unusually squeamish. I can sometimes eat a fried rat with a good relish, if it were necessary. I'm glad to have drunk water so long for the same reason that I prefer the natural sky to an opium eater's heaven. I would fain keep sober always, and there are infinite degrees of drunkenness. I believe that water is the only drink for a wise man. Wine is not so noble a liquor, and think of dashing the hopes of a morning with a cup of warm coffee, or of an evening with a dish of tea. Ah, how low I fall when I am tempted by them. Even music may be intoxicating. Such apparently slight causes destroy Greece and Rome, and will destroy England and America. Of all ebriosity, who does not prefer to be intoxicated by the air he breathes? I have found it to be the most serious objection to coarse labors, long continued, that they compelled me to eat and drink coarsely also. But to tell the truth, I find myself at present somewhat less particular in these respects. I carry less religion to the table, ask no blessing, not because I am wiser than I was, but because I am obliged to confess, because, however much it is to be regretted, with years I have grown more coarse and indifferent. Perhaps these questions are entertained only in youth, as most believe of poetry. My practice is nowhere. My opinion is here. Nevertheless, I am far from regarding myself as one of those privileged ones to whom the Ved refers when it says that he who has true faith in the omnipresent supreme being may eat all that exists. That is, not bound to inquire what is his food or who prepares it. And even in their case, it is to be observed, as a Hindu commentator has remarked, that the Vedant limits this privilege to the time of distress. Who has not sometimes derived an inexpressible satisfaction from his food in which appetite had no share? I have been thrilled to think that I owed a mental perception to the commonly gross sense of taste, that I have been inspired to the palate, that some berries which I have eaten on a hillside had fed my genius. The soul not being mistress of herself, says Song Tzu, one looks and one does not see. One listens and one does not hear. One eats and one does not know the savor of food. He who distinguishes the true savor of his food can never be a glutton. He who does not cannot be otherwise. A Puritan may go to his brown bread crust with as gross an appetite as ever an alderman to his turtle. Not that food which entereth into the mouth defileth the man, but the appetite with which it is eaten. Is neither the quality nor the quantity, but the devotion to the essential savors, when that which is eaten is not a viand to sustain our animal or inspire our spiritual life, but food for the worms that process us. If the hunter has taste for mud turtles, muskrats, and other such savage tidbits, the fine lady indulges a taste for jelly made of calf's foot, or for sardines from over the sea, and they are even. He goes to the mill pond, she to her preserve pot. The wonder is how you and I can live this slimy, beastly life, eating and drinking. Our whole life is startlingly moral. There is never an instant's truce between virtue and vice. Goodness is the only investment that never fails. In the music of the harp, which trembles round the world, it is the insisting on this which thrills us. The harp is the traveling patterer for the universe's insurance company, recommending its laws and our little goodness is all the assessment that we pay. Though the youth at least grows indifferent, the laws of the universe are not indifferent, but are forever on the side of the most sensitive. Listen to every zephyr for some reproof, for it is surely there, and he is unfortunate who does not hear it. We cannot touch a string or move a stop, but the charming moral transfixes us. May an irksome noise go a long way off, is heard as music, a proud, sweet satire on the meanness of our lives. We are conscious of an animal in us, which awakens in proportion as our highest nature slumbers. It is reptile and sensual, and perhaps cannot be wholly expelled, like the worms which even in life and health occupy our bodies. Possibly we may withdraw from it, but never change its nature. I fear that it may enjoy a certain health of its own, that we may be well, yet not pure. The other day I picked up the lower jaw of a hog with white and sound teeth and tusks, which suggested that there was an animal health and vigor distinct from the spiritual. The creature succeeded by other means, the temperance and purity. That in which men differ from brute beasts, says Meniscus, is a thing very inconsiderable. The common herd lose it very soon. Superior men preserve it carefully. Who knows what sort of life would result if we had attained to purity? If I knew so wise a man as could teach me purity, I would go to seek him forthwith. A command over our passions and over the external senses of the body and good acts are declared by the Ved to be the indispensable in the mind's approximation to God. Yet the spirit can for the time pervade and control every member and function of the body and transmute what in form is the grossest sensuality into purity and devotion. The generative energy, which when we are loose, dissipates and makes us unclean. When we are continent, invigorates and inspires us. Chastity is the flowering of man, and what are called genius, heroism, holiness, and the like are but various fruits which succeed it. Man flows at once to God when the channel of purity is open. By turns, our purity inspires and our impurity casts us down. He who is blessed, who is assured that the animal is dying out in this day by day and the vine being established. Perhaps there is none but has cause for the shame on account of the inferior and brutish nature to which he is allied. I fear that we are such gods or demigods only as fawns and satyrs, the divine allied to the beast, the creature of appetite, and that, to some extent, our very life is our disgrace. How happy is he who hath due place assigned to his beasts and disafforested his mind, can use his horse, goat, wolf, and every beast, and is not ass himself to all the rest. Else man not only is the herd of swine, but he whose devils too which did incline them to a headlong rage and made them worse. All sensuality is one, though it takes many forms. All purity is one. It is the same whether man eat or drink or cohabit or sleep sensually. They are but one appetite, and we only need to see a person do any one of these things to know how great a sensualist he is. The impure can neither stand nor sit with purity. When the reptile is attacked and one mouth of his burrow, he shows himself as another. If you would be chaste, you would be temperate. What is chastity? How shall a man know if he is chaste? He shall not know it. We have heard of this virtue, but we know not what it is. We speak conformably to the rumor which we have heard. From exertion come wisdom and purity. From sloth, ignorance and sensuality. In the student's sensuality is a sluggish habit of mind. As unclean person An unclean person is universally a slothful one who sits by a stove, who the sun shines on prostrate, who reposes without being fatigued. If you would avoid uncleanliness and all the sins worked earnestly, though it be at cleaning a stable, nature is hard to overcome, but she must be overcome. What avails is that you are Christian. If you are not purer than the heathen, if you deny yourself no more, if you are not more religious, I know many systems of religion, esteemed heathenish, whose precepts fill the reader with shame and provoke him to new endeavors, though it is to be the performance of rites merely. I hesitate to say these things, but it's not because of the subject. I care not how obscene my words are, but because I cannot speak of them without betraying my impurity. We discourse freely without shame of one form of sensuality, and we are silent about another. We are so degraded that we cannot speak simply of the necessary functions of human nature. In earlier ages, in some countries, every function was reverently spoken of and regulated by law. Nothing was too trivial for the Hindu lawgiver, however offensive it might be to a modern taste. He teaches how to eat, drink, cohabit, avoid excrement and urine, and the like, elevating what it means, and does not falsely excuse himself by calling these things trifles. Every man is the builder of a temple called his body, to the God he worships after a style purely his own, nor can he get off by hammering marble instead. We are all sculptors and painters, and our material is our own flesh and blood and bones. Any nobleness begins at once to refine a man's features, any meanness or sensuality to imbrute them. John Farmer sat on his door one September evening after a hard day's work, his mind running on, his labor more or less. Having bathed, he sat down to recreate his intellectual man. It was a rather cool evening, and some of his neighbors were apprehending a frost. He had not attended to the train of his thoughts long when he heard someone playing on a flute, and that sound harmonized with his mood. Still, he thought of his work, but the burden of his thought was that though this kept running in his head, and he found himself planning and contriving it against his will, yet it concerned him very little. It was no more than the scurf of his skin, which was constantly sloughed off. But the notes of the flute came home to his ears, out of a different sphere from that he had worked in, and suggested work for certain faculties which slumbered in him. They gently did away with the street and the village and the state in which he lived. A voice said to him, "Why do you stay here and live this mean, moiling life, when a glorious existence is possible for you? Those stars twinkle over other fields than these. But how to come out of its condition and actually migrate thither? All that he could think of was to practice some new austerity, to let his mind descend into his body and redeem it, and treat himself with ever-increasing respect." Okay. Coffee break. Housewarming. In October, I went a-grapping to the river meadows and loaded myself with clusters more precious for their beauty and fragrance than for food. There, too, I admired, though I did not gather, the cranberries and small waxen gems, pendants of the meadow grass, pearly and white, which the farmer plucks with an ugly rake, leaving the smooth meadows in a snarl, heedlessly measuring them by the bushel and the dollar only, and sells it spoils of the meads to Boston and New York, destined to be jammed to satisfy the taste of lovers of nature there. So butchers rake the tongues of bison out of the prairie grass, regardless of the torn and drooping plant, The barberry's brilliant fruit was likewise food for my eyes merely, but I collected a small store of wild apples for coddling, which the proprietor and travelers had overlooked. When chestnuts were ripe, I laid up half a bushel for winter. It was very exciting at that season to roam the then boundless chestnut woods of Lincoln. They now sleep their long sleep under the railroad, with a bag on my shoulder and a stick to open birds with it in my hand, for I did not always wait for the frost amid the rustling of leaves and the loud reproofs of the red squirrels and the jays, whose half-consumed nuts I sometimes stole for the birds which they had selected, whose sure to contain sound ones. Occasionally I climbed and shook the trees. There grew also behind my house, and one large tree, which almost overshadowed it, was when in flower, a bouquet which scented the whole neighborhood. But the squirrels and the jays got most of its fruits, the last coming in flocks early in the morning and picking the nuts out of the birds before they fell. I relinquished those trees to them and visited the more distant woods composed wholly of chestnut. These nuts, as far as they went, were a good substitute for bread. Many other substitutes might be found. Digging one day for fishworms, I discovered the ground nut, Abios tuberosa, on its string. The potatoes of the Aborigines, a sort of fabulous fruit which I had begun to doubt if I had ever dug and eaten in childhood, as I had been told, and had not dreamed it. I had often since seen its crimpled, red, velvety blossoms supported by the stems of other plants, without knowing it to be the same. Cultivation has well nigh exterminated it. It has a sweetish taste, much like that of frost-bitten potato, and I found it better boiled than roasted. This tuber seemed like a faint promise of nature to rear her own children and feed them simply here at some future period. In these days of fatted cattle and wavering grain fields, this humble root, which was once the totem of an Indian tribe, is quite forgotten or known only by its flowering vine. But let wild nature reign here once more, and the tender and luxurious English grains will probably disappear before a myriad of foes, and without the care of man, the crow may carry back even that last seed of corn to the great cornfield of the Indian's God in the southwest, whence he is said to have brought it. But the now almost exterminated groundnut will perhaps revive and flourish in spite of frost and wilderness, prove itself to be indigenous, and resume its ancient importance and dignity as the diet of the hunter tribe. Some Indian Ceres or Minerva might have been the inventor and bestower of it, and when the reign of poetry commences here, its leaves and strings of nuts may be represented on our works of art. Already, by the 1st of September, I had seen 2 or 3 small maples turn scarlet across the pond, beneath where the white stems of 3 aspens diverged at the point of a promontory next the water. Ah, many a tale their color told. And gradually, from week to week, the character of each tree came out, and it admired itself reflected in the smooth mirror of the lake. Each morning, the manager of this gallery substituted some new picture, distinguished by more brilliant or harmonious color for the old upon the walls. The wasps came by the thousands to my lodge in October, as to the winter quarters, and settled on my windows within and on the walls overhead, sometimes deterring visitors from entering. Each morning, when they were numbed with cold, I swept some of them out, but I did not trouble myself much to get rid of them. I even felt complimented by their regarding my house as a desirable shelter. They never molested me seriously, though they bedded with me, and they gradually disappeared into what crevices I do not know, avoiding winter and unspeakable cold. Like the wasps, before I finally went into the winter quarters, in November I used to resort to the northeast side of Walden, which the sun reflected from the pitch pine woods and the stony shore, made the fireside of the pond. It is so much pleasanter and wholesomer to be warmed by the sun when you can be than by artificial fire. I thus warmed myself by the still glowing embers within which the summer, like a departed hunter, had left. When I came to build my chimney, I studied masonry. My bricks, being second-hand ones, required to be cleaned with a trowel, so that I learned more than the usual of the qualities of bricks and trowels. The mortar on them was 50 years old, and was said to be still growing harder. But this is one of those sayings which men love to repeat, whether they are true or not. Such sayings themselves grow harder and adhere more firmly with age, and it would take many blows with a trowel to clean an old wiseacre of them. Many of the villages of Mesopotamia are built of second-hand bricks of a very good quality, obtained from the ruins of Babylon, and the cement on them is older and probably harder still. However that may be, I was struck by the peculiar toughness of the steel which bore so many violent blows without being worn out. As my bricks had been in a chimney before, though I did not read the same of Nebuchadnezzar on them, I picked out as many fireplace bricks as I could find to save work and waste, and I filled the spaces between the bricks about the fireplace with stones from the pond shore, and also made my mortar with the white sand from the same place. I lingered most about the fireplace as the most vital part of the house. Indeed, I worked so deliberately that though I commenced at the ground in the morning, a course of bricks raised a few feet above the floor served my pillow at night. Yet I did not get a stiff neck, for that I remember my stiff neck is of older date. I took a poet to board for a fortnight about these times, which caused me to put it for room. He brought his own knife, though I had two, and we used to scour them by thrusting them into the earth. He shared with me the labors of cooking. I was pleased to see my work rising so square and solid by degrees, and reflected that if it proceeded slowly, it was calculated to endure a long time. The chimney is to some extent an independent structure, standing on the ground and rising, though of the house to the heavens, through the house to the heavens. Even after the house is burned, it still stands sometimes, and its importance and independence are apparent. This was towards the end of the summer. It was now November.